funny enough, was something like every animal and Fogler and the TV, because everything scared me at that point. So now that doesn't do it. I think what's really scary for me is the human mind. You know, psychosis and all these crazy things that we can do, and how that affects other people in the world around us, and people living in their heads and all of that. It's very frightening, I don't know, to me. And of course, clowns as well. And I've watched so many Japanese horror movies that women's hair now frightens me. And I'm serious. What do you think about the AI hair?
I'm completely with you on this.
It's scary. It's definitely.
It's always black. It's always wet. It's terrible.
So that's actually really scary to me now. You know, and going back to this for a second to that psychosis thing, I don't know if any of you, I mean, I'm sure you guys are avid horror movie watchers too. One of the most disturbing movies I've ever seen, and I mean I've seen, is a movie called Dead Girl. And if you have not seen that and you really are thick-skinned, you should watch it, because it's all about what humans do to other people. It's not just it's really a zombie movie, but it's not. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's really crazy.
So I mean, it's out on DVD or?
Yeah, it's on Netflix I think still too. So we have Netflix.
Well, so obviously then everyone finds different things to be scary, which I guess kind of lends itself to the question, how do you write horror then if that's your challenge? You're facing something where everyone finds something different scary. What's the best way to kind of approach that? Is there any way, other than writing Lock and Key, is there any way to really, frighten everyone at once? Or do you just aim for one sort of horror?
I think for that, for me certainly, part of it is a question of, it starts with what are you writing, what story are you telling? Because a lot of the time it will be a question of, well, what's going to scare my main characters? What's going to be scary for them? Because best case scenario as a reader, you're really going to key into what they're going through. And if you're sort of thinking, all right, what position are they in? What are they dealing with? And then you amp that up as much as possible. You think, all right, so how are they going to be in the most peril possible? How are they going to be, what are they afraid to lose? And how can you show that without to lose that? So, I think that really a lot of it does come down to the genre, the specifics of the story that you're telling, and that way, hopefully anybody that's reading your book and that's invested in your book, they will be scared too, because that's what they came for. You hook them with the premise, and they're scared because, your characters are scared. It's funny, to go back to, you can tell all we talk about is character. That's just like our lives. We basically sit there and so character. But with Freakshow, it was really, really important because they pitched their book, so I'm just going to give you a really broad stroke thing. The book is about a world where the world's only superheroes killed, and basically what's left are these 5 freaks, these monsters who are born out of the chemical explosion that kills the world's only superhero. And they're monsters, and they're broken, they're deformed, they're defective, and they're out for revenge. They aren't out to be heroes, they aren't out to be anything more than catharsis machines. They are there to get any kind of closure that they can. And the question of the book becomes here, can you be something more? But what was interesting about writing that is that we have 5 characters. Those 5 characters are going to end up on different spectrums, right? Or different parts of that spectrum. So inevitably, at least one of those characters is going to go much further than you ever wanted them to go towards the direction of being monsters. And that is, I think, what starts to get really scary. It's not just that, oh, I've made you care about this character and now I'm going to put a knife here in his eye. It's, I've made you care about this character and now he's going to put a knife to somebody's eye. That he's going to do things that you can't imagine him doing. And then by doing that, by having really awful things happen, not just to the people you care about, but by the people you care about, that's going to scare you. I challenge anyone not to be scared of the betrayal of the protagonist. I think that is inevitably a really scary thing. And that happens in Lock and Key too.
Well, that's why character is so important. I think every writer would agree character is important. And what I was thinking about is, with Cancer in the Eye specifically, the reason why this book is a success isn't because, a man that went to go with John Lennon. Before that, it was a success because people can relate to the fact that Holden Caulfield could be well, sometimes you can just look at them and see it, this place, you're like, well, clearly the guy's obviously insane, but at the same time, you relate that it makes sense. So you find the snaps in, I don't know if I'm ruining the classic literature. Spoiler? No spoiler. Anyway, so something happens, you suddenly go, oh, that could be me, essentially. Am I that close to having that happen to me? But basically, the point is you make a character in horror that everyone can relate to. That's how you relate to everyone, is by making the person that they're following completely relatable. And as far as that goes, you also have to sort of horror. There's that turn where they stop working and they start fighting. And then they're capable of anything out there. There's always that moment. Usually the horror heroine is covered in blood because she's just not observing. It's oh my god. And you gotta have that turn. That's the part where they find this happens. They themselves almost become a monster. But something else happens. So they're complete chaos, or they get it together and they go, wait, no, I'm not a monster. I like the chaos part.
You, what did I say? Human mind, nothing scary anymore. Okay. The other thing you have to, from a writing perspective, I think, when you write horror, you have to think a lot in terms of pacing. And it's very important to structure the stories in a way where you leave a lot of elements of unknown, because the unknown is scary. What's around the corner, you don't know. When you're going to die, you don't know. Something's after you don't even know what it is, that's scary. So you have to leave a bunch of those elements in and keep them paced out long term so that the reader is in suspense, you can keep your characters in suspense. And I think that's really important in terms of writing horror, because the more you don't know what's out there, the more you don't know what's going to happen to the characters, to you as you read. Anytime that you can throw in those twists and turns, all of that's really important to keeping that horror prolonged.
I was going to follow up on that really fast. I think part of what you said is really interesting, because I think that there's a brand of horror that is so about the unknown that the unknown is all it is, like Lovecraft, right? Where you're reading it, and it's like, well, what does Cthulhu look like? Like at this point, everybody's got like, oh, he's got the wings, and he's great. The great thing about Lovecraft is he probably describes it like once ever in all of the. He doesn't spend any time describing monsters to you because he doesn't need to. The whole point is that when the character looks upon that monster, he goes insane. That's just the end for him. And that's what makes it so terrifying is if you understood what it looked like, you would look at that little like plushy Cthulhu doll that you can buy anywhere around here, and you would go mad. That's terrifying. But on the flip side, I think there's something really cool about I was talking about Guillermo del Toro earlier, and like you look at something like Pan's Labyrinth, he's so proud of his creature effects, he's so proud of his monsters, so proud of these things that he's built around the world, and he's not hiding them. Like he's showing you all of his creature effects about as quickly as he can, and about as much detail as he can. And they don't stop being scary because you see them. They start being scary because you feel for them. And that is like, it's really interesting to me that you can have horror of the unknown, and that is really, you're right, primally scary. But then, as movies have sort of allowed us to get very visual in this media, because I guess you could argue that all literature, all like horror literature is horror of the unknown because you can't see it. But now that we can see it, it's kind of making it into a place where we have a whole new realm of horror that's based on character that can kind of open up and build out.
Yeah. Just I think to even expand on that, which is really cool, like you look at something from the classics, you look at something like Frankenstein, and it's so cool that it shows the diversity of the genre. That what's interesting about Frankenstein is that you're exploring what Frankenstein's monster is going through. You're seeing this whole thing of his journey, like like you're in the movie, seeing the little girl, and it's like that is also horror. That is another place that's part of the genre, and it's not necessarily about like scaring you in that overt way. It's sort of like when you're exploring those types of characters, and you're just dealing with them right up front. And I think that that's part of what's fun is that you can do so many different things in the horror genre, in terms of approach, and these types of characters, they live in this genre. So you can sort of go, all right, I love these types of characters, how are we going to play with these toys? And that's still horror. And I think that can be one of the really fun things about what you're able to do.
I actually want to ask a question, kind of inspired by some of what you guys were saying. You mentioned like Frankenstein, Lovecraft, and as writers who are writing horror now, you are kind of writing on the coattails of some phenomenal writers that stand back centuries. Horror is one of the oldest genres, and people have been telling stories of frightening people since before the written word. So, how do you, first of all, do you find things like Frankenstein or Bela Lugosi's Dracula or Wolfman, do you find those classic movies, those classic monsters scary? Do you think kids of the day still find those scary, or is it kind of a generational thing because you're it seems like horror's always reinvented itself. You think the classic kind of staples, vampires, werewolves, monsters, you think they go out of style?
I do not find classical vampires scary, but I don't find our modern equivalents scary either. There was a time when vampires were scary, and I'm trying to get us back to that. There's a sequence.
Well, when you say modern, you're talking about like Twilight vampires, or because I think of like I know you're a big Steve Niles fan, and I think of 30 Days of Night. His vampires
He's
are
coming
terrifying.
back, but he had to come back. We need that. We need people that were before, but we have this next